You are doing it right now. Maybe not consciously, maybe not with words, but some part of your brain is quietly measuring how you look against the person beside you, measuring how much you earn against what your colleague mentioned in passing, measuring how your life looks against the life someone you barely know just posted online. You did not decide to do this. You cannot seem to stop. And the reason has nothing to do with insecurity or weakness or social media. Although social media certainly makes it worse, the reason is ancient, and it is one of the most important survival mechanisms your brain ever developed. Social comparison is not a flaw in the human mind. It is a feature. It is a deeply wired cognitive system that spent hundreds of thousands of years keeping your ancestors alive, informed, and correctly positioned within the social hierarchy that determined whether they ate, mated, and survived. The discomfort you feel when someone else seems to be doing better than you is not vanity. It is an alarm system that once had genuine survival value, now firing in a world it was never designed for. Leon Festinger at Stanford University first described this formally in 1954 with his social comparison theory. His core idea was simple and radical at the same time. Humans have a fundamental drive to evaluate their own opinions and abilities, and in the absence of objective standards, they do this by comparing themselves to other people. Not occasionally, constantly, automatically. Below the level of conscious thought, your brain is always taking a reading of where you stand relative to the people around you. It is not a character flaw. It is a cognitive reflex as automatic as blinking. But Festinger was working in a world before evolutionary psychology had mapped the deeper reasons for why this reflex exists. The reason goes back much further than Stanford University. It goes back to the small band. For the vast majority of human history, you lived in a group of 20 to 50 people. You knew every single one of them. You knew their strengths and their weaknesses. You knew who was the better hunter, who was the more skilled toolmaker, who had the most social alliances, who the group turned to in a crisis. And your position within that hierarchy was not abstract. It was not a matter of self-esteem or ego. It was a matter of survival. Higher status individuals in small band societies got better access to food, better mates, more protection, more support when they were sick or injured. Lower status individuals got less of everything that kept them alive. In that world, failing to monitor your position relative to others was not a psychological problem. It was a death sentence. The brain that did not constantly compare, that did not notice when someone else's skills were outpacing its own, that did not feel the uncomfortable pressure of falling behind in the social hierarchy, that brain was selected against. Your brain, the one doing the comparing right now, is the brain that survived precisely because it never stopped watching. Researcher Roy Baumeister at the University of Queensland has argued that the need to belong, to maintain a position within a social group, is one of the most powerful and fundamental human motivations, as basic as hunger or thirst. Social comparison is one of the primary tools the brain uses to monitor that belonging. When you compare yourself to someone and find yourself falling short, the discomfort you feel is not trivial. It is the same signal that once told your ancestor their position in the group was weakening. Act, adjust, or lose everything. The problem is the world changed, and the comparison mechanism did not. For 300,000 years, your comparison pool was limited to the 20 to 50 people in your immediate band. You compared yourself to people you actually knew in real time, doing real things. The comparisons were grounded in reality. If someone in your group was a better hunter than you, that was a factual, observable, meaningful piece of information. It told you something true about your relative standing and gave you accurate data to act on. Now, your comparison pool is effectively infinite. Social media has handed your ancient comparison mechanism a fire hose when it was built for a drinking straw. You are no longer comparing yourself to 20 people you know well. You are comparing yourself to thousands of people you have never met, presenting the most curated, optimized, filtered versions of their lives. And your brain, which evolved to treat all social comparison information as urgent and real, cannot tell the difference. Psychologist Sherry Turkle at MIT has documented what this does to the sense of self. The constant exposure to other people's highlight reels does not just make you feel worse about yourself. It fundamentally distorts your sense of what normal life looks like. When your comparison baseline shifts from the 20 people in your band to the 10,000 most successful, most attractive, most accomplished people currently active on a platform, your brain recalibrates what counts as adequate. And almost nothing in your actual life can clear that bar. There is also the upward versus downward comparison distinction that researchers have studied extensively. When you compare yourself to someone doing worse than you, it tends to produce a temporary boost in mood and self-esteem. When you compare yourself to someone doing better, it tends to produce anxiety, envy, or motivation, depending on whether you believe the gap is closable. Psychologist Thomas Musweiler at the University of Cologne found that the direction and interpretation of social comparison has measurable effects on cognition, physical performance, and even physical sensation. The comparisons your brain makes are not just emotional events. They change how you think, how you perform, and how you experience your own body. And here is the part that most people miss. The comparison drive does not just affect your mood. It affects your perception of reality itself. A study by researchers at New York University found that people who had just compared themselves unfavorably to others literally perceived hills as steeper and distances as longer. The social comparison system is so deeply woven into the brain's threat detection network that it physically changes how you see the world around you. When you feel behind, the obstacles in front of you look bigger, not metaphorically, in measurable, documented ways. Your ancestors lived in a world where knowing exactly how you stood relative to the group was one of the most important things you could know. The anxiety of falling behind was functional. It pushed you to work harder, build more alliances, develop more skills, contribute more to the group. The discomfort was the engine. But the engine was never designed to run on the fuel of infinite strangers living perfect lives. It was designed to run on the fuel of 20 real people making real mistakes, living real lives beside you. In that context, the gap between you and the best person in your band was real, closable, and meaningful. In the modern context, the gap between you and the curated best version of 10,000 strangers is none of those things. It is not real. It is not closable. And it generates a signal your brain treats as urgently meaningful, but that leads nowhere useful. The next time you catch yourself comparing, and you will catch yourself, because your brain will never stop doing this, try to remember what the mechanism actually is. It is not evidence that you are inadequate. It is a 300,000-year-old survival system that has not yet learned that the group got a lot bigger and the stakes are not what they used to be. Your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do. It is just doing it in the wrong world. If this made you see that comparing feeling differently, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below and tell me which part landed hardest for you. And if you want more of this, subscribe to Simply Odd. A new video drops every week. The next one might explain something you have wondered about your whole life without ever knowing what to ask.